Camille sat on the edge of the tub. She clutched a pregnancy test in her hand on the way out. "It can't be that," mumbled the girl, looking at the two stripes. They were so bright, literally burning in front of her gaze like two red flags. Teased, taunted, asked with a sneer, "And what are you going to do now, Camille? How are your Napoleonic plans for your life?" They're still on. The girl had no answers to these questions. Camille didn't understand how it happened. No, she knew that babies don't come from cabbage, and storks don't deliver them by courier. But she couldn't understand why she had fallen into this trap of nature one single night. One mistake she had made could not have led to such a fatal outcome. The girl covered her eyes, feeling herself throwing up heat and sweat. She remembered the night she had spent with the director. At least, that's what she thought. That day, she had made it through the first round of the beauty pageant selection process. The small victory had turned Camille's head. She had always dreamed of fame, popularity, and recognition. God gave her beauty, so the girl saw herself only in the spotlight. She dreamed of a career as a model or actress, wanted to appear on the covers of popular glossy publications as a child, rather than decided, looking at her mother, who worked as a saleswoman. What will not repeat such a fate? The girl depressing, gray life that surrounded her. Poor repair of their two-roomed house. What did the grandmother inherit? The potholes in the street roads that were constantly full of water, even if it didn't rain. The clothes she had to pick up for the neighborhood girls Camille hated. She was the one who loved the life that was broadcast on TV shows and on the pages of magazines. She was fascinated by the glamorous world of fashion. At 5 years old, she could already gut her mother's meager makeup bag once and walk down makeshift runways from the hip. Adults only laughed at the child's antics. Who didn't wear their mom's pantyhose on their head or heeled shoes as a child? Said Evelyn, Camille's mother. Later, the girl got to the ballet and realized that she wanted to be a ballerina too. After all, they were like fairies from fairy tales. They were needed. There was applause, a stage. She decided her name was a sign. After all, Camille was a great ballerina. How could she be any worse? Evelyn came to her rescue. The single mother didn't have much money, but she tried to support her daughter's hobbies, especially such beautiful ones. Except Camille didn't fit in. Your girl didn't have the character. Adriana shook her head, standing in front of the league with a perfectly straight back. There is talent, undoubtedly. However, it is not great enough to pay off her antics. The other girls complain about her constantly, not a lesson without a scandal. She pushes, she fights, she purposely crushes her students' legs. If they do better, Camille doesn't take criticism. She gets angry if she doesn't like something. Today the girls were doing the usual small dance steps. Camille couldn't do the picks. But she refused to listen to me and hit me. That's unacceptable. The final straw for the teacher was when Camille pushed and called her daughter Emily names. Camille and Emily were the same age and went to the same dance class. Her mother treated Emily the same way as the other students, sometimes even more demanding. However, Camille decided that Emily's teacher was on special duty. When Emily was asked to show the rest of the students the Alice Assembly binder, the girl did a great job. For her age, she was a real smart girl, even a genius. Emily had clearly inherited her mother's talent. Except that Camille was jealous of other people's success. She had to be the first always and in everything. So the girl told Emily that she was nothing without her mother. And then rudely pushed her, from which she twisted her leg. That was the end of Camille's ballet career. However, the girl continued to live in a world of fantasies and dreams of popularity. Classmates did not interest her. Study too. Camille always had problems with teachers. She claimed that she was not interested in math or geography. I've given up. Hogarth was all about her looks, and fashion magazines became Camille's Bible. At 14, she started going to auditions, only to no avail. Turns out looks aren't everything. To become an artist, you need talent. Camille gritted her teeth and decided to take a different path. The girl began to try herself in the fashion industry. And so, when Hogarth turned 18, her suffering paid off. The first step to winning a beauty contest. What was happening encouraged Camille. After the selection process, she was invited to a party with the other girls. It was held on a fashionable yacht. Camille, who had never even sailed on an inflatable boat before, was impressed by what was happening. She was constantly smiling in a way that made her cheekbones droop. The girl, who had never drank before, did not refuse the drinks offered to her. The taste of sparkling wine made her head light. That's when she met Noah. It turned out that he was a director who was looking for a girl to play the lead role in his new movie. The young director was interested in the pretty girl. "I work in France. I moved there to fulfill a dream and become a director." "Why exactly there?" asked a surprised Camille. "You know that the birthplace of cinematography is Paris." After all, it was in the Paris Grand Café that the world's first movie show took place. It was organized by the Lumiere brothers, who went down in history as the fathers of cinema. They invented the movie, the machine, the cinematograph, and shot the first short films. For example, Arrival of the Train, telling about a nanny who caught every word of the director. However, it is customary to go only to Russia for the most beautiful girls. "You know, Camille, I saw you right away. Maybe you didn't see it, but my seat was right behind the jury chairs. I think you're perfect for the lead role. And you could win. I can put in a good word with the jury. I have connections there." The man reached out and touched the girl's fingers, looking fervently into her eyes. Camille's heart skipped a beat at that moment. Camille did not remove his hand, of course. "It's a chance," the thought finally flashed through her mind. After an hour and a couple of glasses of champagne, the French director invited her to continue the evening in his cabin. Noah said he wanted to discuss with her her fantastic future in the movies. Noah took the girl to a luxurious convention with another bottle of champagne and a bucket of ice. Looking at that bucket, Camille was reminded of James Bond in the movie Gold Singer. In one scene, the famous Agent 007 seduces a girl with the same motion as Noah took out the bottle. The house is moved from the ice bucket. Probably in this second, could not believe that she came to the cabin not to discuss the script of the future movie. She came here for the very glamorous life, where champagne was expensive and had a harvest, not Soviet. "What did you open on New Year's Eve and stuff Olivier with it? Will you close the door?" asked Noah, opening the bottle. Camille realized that she had to make a choice. It was obvious. The girl nodded and closed the cabin door behind her. The golden lock clicked into place. Camille woke up in the middle of the night to someone's unhappy screams. She opened her eyes with difficulty and saw that an insanely handsome man in a tuxedo was yelling at Noah. He was standing there in his underwear with his head down like a simple schoolboy. From the shock, the girl instantly regained consciousness and shed her drowsiness. She jumped up and immediately blushed. Realizing that she was naked, the girl covered herself with a blanket, trying to take in what was happening. The truth became a gulp of ice water and the first lesson for Hogarth that no one can be trusted in the world of show business. "You're fired?" "You got it?" shouted the stranger at the director. "How could you bring any kind of ennui into my quarters?" "I'm sorry, it won't happen again," babbled Noah back. "Please don't fire me. I have a 6-month-old baby." "What am I going to tell my wife?" "You're just thinking about your wife now. Wretches. How on earth can you stand it?" The man continued to yell. Camille's lips quivered and her eyes glared. Don't get tearful. She didn't care that she was someone's lover for the first time. She was choked with resentment because Noah wasn't a director. From beautiful France, he was a simple cola. Moreover, he worked as a chauffeur for the owner of this sieve, who was really a European director and a beauty pageant judge. "Clean this place up," roared the director at Noah, who was nodding like a Chinese dummy. "And that too, throw it out of my bed." Then the villa staff put the linens away. Camille didn't immediately realize that by this he meant her. The girl blushed thickly, tried to hide her face behind her hair, afraid of being recognized and disqualified. Fortunately for Hogarth, that didn't happen. However, she didn't end up winning the competition either. The girl was too tense, shaking when she got on stage in front of the director, so she stumbled several times during the fashion show. Did you stutter during the interview? Of course, she didn't tell anyone about her fatal mistake. She wouldn't have been able to withstand the sneering of her friends and those thrown behind her back. Barbed phrases or jokes like the very one where the girl pulls down her panties from her legs and asks, "Oh, you're definitely a producer." However, time passed. Many months had passed since that night. Camille had managed to put her unfortunate mistake out of her mind. And now the news of a positive pregnancy test. Camille was pulled out of her memories by a knock on the bathroom door and her mother's sharp voice. "Camille, how long have you been in there?" Evelyn asked. "You've been in there for an hour." I've come to change, I want to wash up too. Mom's voice brought Camille back to reality. She quickly swept away the test strip and slipped it into her pocket from the hand soap and rinsed her face, on which sweat had broken out, with ice water. Then, after glancing at herself in the mirror, stepped out to meet her parent. "What are you sitting there?" asked Mom. "I'm tired. I wanted to lie in the bath." Camille waved away without looking at her mother. "I won't eat dinner. I want to go to bed." She walked quickly down the hall to her room, locking the door for a second. Camille went to a large mirror and looked carefully at her reflection. The woman was only interested in her belly. She turned to the mirror both this way and that way, but in front of her remained a thin, even haggard girl. The sight of her own thinness reassured her. "It's just a mistake." Camille whispered again. "A glitch of some kind." Some doctor at the reception confirmed her worst fears. "Are you pregnant?" The doctor remarked after a thorough examination. "It's not far along, but I'll be able to tell for sure after the ultrasound." "When you say that, it was the last date of menstruation." Camille was embarrassed. "I don't remember," she admitted. "It's just that I have a very strict diet. I don't want to get fat, so my periods are erratic." She didn't mention that she'd forgotten about Women's Days for 6 months. Lately, Camille started to notice that she was gaining weight. If the numbers on the scale changed, she got angry. The girl could stop eating altogether, only drinking water, just to stay slim. Her ideal was Kate Moss at the beginning of her career in the style of Kate Moss, who was called heroin chic. Once upon a time long ago made a sensation and became a trend in the world of high fashion. It implied thinness, haggard pale skin, dark circles under the eyes. Camille dreamed of being the same, so she tried all the diets. She learned from childhood to deceive her mother by hiding food from her plate in bags and throwing it out the window. "And when was your last sexual experience?" Frowned. The doctors frowned even harder. Camille bit her lip and exhaled more than she had 6 months ago. The gynecologist's hand, which was recording the patient's data in a book, froze. She raised her gaze to the girl. "Tell me you have not noticed other signs of pregnancy: toxemia, enlargement or soreness in the chest, malaise, heartburn. That's what happens in a concealed pregnancy. It's a condition where the embryo may be inside the uterus without the woman realizing it." Camille clutched her hands into her hair, pulling it up painfully. She shook her head, but not because she was denying the doctor's words. On the contrary, it was all part of her life, except that it had been for a long time. Camille, who wanted to be a model, often experienced GI problems. Did morning sickness and heartburn surprise or frighten her? "Yes, I did. I have eating issues." I thought, "Oh my God, now what do I do?" She sputtered out dramatically, looking into the gynecologist's eyes. "I can't have a baby, you know. I don't want to be a mother. We can get rid of it. We can do it right now." The doctor tapped her pen on the table, took her eyes off Camille, betraying nervousness. "I'm afraid the time limit may be unacceptable," Camille said. "It's very dangerous. Even a termination before 12 weeks is considered late. And if it's as you say, your baby is already a human being, you know?" The ultrasound confirmed the gynecologist's words. Camille learned that there was a baby girl growing under her heart. Strangely enough, the baby was healthy. At least the machine showed she was doing well. The doctors also ran lab tests and rushed to examine the mom. "Everything is fine. You will meet the baby soon," the doctors declared. Whether it was someone or not, Camille did not even smile. The pregnant girl looked at the scans that the doctor put in her hands, but still did not want to believe in what was happening. She didn't understand how she could have this home inside her. Camille, sobbing, confessed everything to her mother. "The doctors forbid me to have an abortion." Camille sobbed loudly. "I'll find another clinic. Those who agree to it will be pleased. Neighbors will come running." Mom turned pale and then crossed herself. "What am I talking about? Don't take the sin on your soul. Leave the child." Evelyn tried to comfort her daughter. "Don't worry. Is a baby a bad thing? So what if there's no father? There's 2 of us. We'll pick it up somehow. I'll help you. I raised you and I'll raise another child. Artists don't have children, neither do models." She shouted to her mother, her voice ringing hysterically. "I don't want a baby. I want to be famous." When her emotions subsided, Camille was able to pull herself together. She gave in to the persuasions of her mother and the doctors at the clinic and decided to carry the baby to term. Her mother told her, "Right, you'll be glad when you see your baby. You'll love her with all your heart." A mother's love is the strongest, the most selfless. Only Evelyn's words were not prophetic. The girl Camille named Isabella was born 2 months later. Camille felt no connection to her daughter. As before, she was only interested in her own life and career. Moreover, the child irritated her. When the girl was 3 months old, she managed to get a part in a play. Then she hated little Bella even more strongly. The child often cried, did not sleep well, preventing Camille from resting at night. "Mommy, can you do something about her?" she cried out to Isabella's grandmother. If the girl came in a dress, "I'm trying to learn my part, she disturbs me." Her tummy hurts, probably because you started feeding her formula right away, depriving her of breast milk, shook her head at Grandma Evelyn, rocking the baby in her arms. You would have cuddled her, even though you killed her. Maybe if she smells her mommy, she'll be calmer. She misses you. Camille just rolled her eyes at the ceiling. What does she know? She's a couple days old. You said you'd help, so you're going to sit with her. The play went well. Camille may not have had the lead role, but this time she had an affair with a man who was definitely a theater director. They were some kind of driver. Therefore, the girl was counting on the lead role in the next production. Soon Camille went on tour with the troupe, leaving her 1-year-old daughter on her mother. The girl's career, as she dreamed, went uphill, except that the young artist did not tell anyone about the fact that at home waiting for her daughter, she considered Isabella her own and dirty secret. Camille's schedule was rigid. She spent almost all of her time in the theater 6 days a week. The young artist had rehearsals, followed by performances. She was away from home from morning until midnight, and sometimes she didn't come back at all for several days. She would later tell her mother, smiling blissfully after the premiere, "We went to a party." The whole theater thing is so unusual. Michael introduced me to some powerful people. "Michael, is this your man, that director?" Evelyn asked. "You're looking at your daughter. And then you met Betty." Camille frowned. Her forehead cast a quick glance at her daughter. It was obvious she was uncomfortable looking at the little girl. The child seemed alien to her, and Bella had stopped responding to her mother. If earlier she walked and smiled, later she gave out syllables and sounds, reached for her mother in her hand, then now the wooden spoon that her grandmother gave her interested her much more than the unfamiliar aunt. "It is not time yet," answered Camille. "You know men don't like women with a trailer. Decent men don't call their children a trailer." Evelyn shrugged her lips. Offended for her granddaughter, Camille blinked. But then decided she didn't want to talk about the unpleasant topic anymore. She bounced around the kitchen again, talking about the applause of the audience, which she managed to disrupt, about the praise of the director, with whom she shared a bed, about the envious looks of other artists. One critic even wrote about me in the newspaper. Of course, he ran a steamroller over me, but Michael said it was the way to success. That critic doesn't like anyone. Territories. Young woman. "I'm sure I'll be in the movies. You'll see me on TV soon." "Mom, that would be nice." Evelyn couldn't contain her sarcasm. Feeding her, wiping her, staining her lips. At least somewhere your daughter could see her mother often, if only in a movie. And so their life went on. Isabella grew up, and Grandma Evelyn tried to replace her mother. But the years were not the same. It was increasingly difficult for a woman to keep track of them, and her health was getting worse. When Bella grew up, Camille began to treat the child more warmly. She liked that her daughter was very beautiful and looked like her, because Hogarth always liked beautiful things. However, her mother was still unwilling to give her her time. Camille came home after tours or came home after concerts and social events. Happy, radiant. At such moments she was not angry with her daughter, gave her a little bit of her warmth. Bella reveled in these moments, absorbing them like a sponge. If a girl could, she would take her mother's affection and hide it in her pockets, stuffing it to keep it in reserve like delicious candy. One day when Camille Hogarth returned to the family home after a long time, the little girl greeted her in a white gymnastics leotard and tutu skirt. Camille was shocked to see the child wearing her old costume. In places the leotard had aged. "Tell." "Mommy, look how I can do it now," shouted the girl. Bella first deftly sat on the twine and then stood on her tiptoes, took her leg back. She was in too much of a hurry to tell her mother everything she had learned. Bella longed to hear praise from the person most important to her. She was always looking through your old albums. When she saw your baby pictures, she said you looked like an angel and asked you to go to ballet school herself. Evelyn grudgingly shared. Your old school is still open, and it won't take long to get there. Why did you take her? Remember how it ended for me. Embarrassing her adult daughter's nose. You're just wasting your money. Ballet is expensive. I take money out of my pension, and Bella's doing great. Emily praises her, and she's charging me half of it. Said the rest is made up for by Bella's talent, Evelyn replied. Emily, Camille's face stretched. Is that my teacher Adriana's daughter? Yes, her mother nodded. She inherited her mom's school, and now she teaches the girls. What Evelyn was silent on was the fact that the trauma Hogarth had suffered as a child had been extremely unfortunate. Emily continued to study with her mother, but the road to the big stage of a talented girl was closed, so she devoted herself to teaching others. After all her childhood and adolescence was spent in ballet halls. No, it's still expensive. What about Tutus? Point shoes. She can't always wear my old clothes. Do you know that ballerinas can spend 300 shoes a year? My daughter was indignant. No, I don't think she'll make a ballerina. And for temporary bliss, it's a lot of money to spend. If you have nowhere to spend the money, then give it to me. I need a new dress, socks, shoes. I give her a new dress every week, so she can have one of your outfits like a prima donna. I can't close the closet. The mother was angry at her negligent daughter. I want to be a star. I cannot appear in the same thing in public, splashing waves with my hands, and you know what? I don't want to argue. Let me tell you how I got my premiere. A man gave it to me. Camille sat down on the sofa, put her foot on the leg, and spread her silk skirt on her legs. It was blue and built like water. Isabella at this time sat on the floor looking at her mother. She had evidently been forgotten by everyone. The little girl looked at her beautiful mommy and wondered why her teacher, Lady Emily, was so kind and praised her all the time. She smiled if the little girl succeeded in something, clapped her hands, called her a talented pearl, and her mother said nothing, although Bella tried very hard. Isabella loved going to ballet school. She was fascinated by the cute girls, although she was a little embarrassed that their clothes were much prettier. After kindergarten on class days, she waited for Grandma like she was on pins and needles. She grabbed her grandmother's hand and hurriedly ran to class with her, so as not to be late and to be the first to arrive. The thing was that the one who came early could get up first and start the circle. For Bella, it was important. The girl thought that her mother, who always talked only about the stage and applause, would pay attention to her if she became a ballerina. However, Camille again thought only of herself. Time passed and nothing changed. Bella, being a naive child, saw Camille as a beautiful princess from the fairy tales her grandmother read. She admired her mother because she was so beautiful, smelled of lipstick and perfume, came with flowers and always brought her gifts. And also the promise of many, many promises. When you grow up, I will definitely take you with me on tour, show you how my life goes behind the scenes and on stage, said Camille, hugging her daughter. Maybe you want to become a model or an artist like Mom. You're so beautiful, Bella. You know you're turning 6 this year. I'll come to the party. We'll spend your birthday together. Really, clapped V from the heart of the girl, and then hugged her mom tightly around her neck. And can I call my girlfriends? In the kindergarten, no one believes that I have a mom. I say that you are very beautiful and play different princesses on the stage, but they call me Russian. They say I only have a grandmother. Of course, call me. Camille smiled broadly. I'll organize such a party that everyone will envy you. We'll buy a huge pink cake and new matching dresses. Can I have a yellow cake? Bella asked. I don't like pink even though it's a rainbow color. You can have any color you want, promised Mother Evelyn. Your daughter has unfulfilled promises like a fool's wrappers. She was angry. Bella trusts you. You've missed all her birthdays. She waits for you every time, then gets a present in the mail and tries to hold back tears. The last time she didn't go to bed all night, didn't forget the candles on the cake, didn't let her hair fly or take off her dress. She was waiting for you to come to her party. You didn't even call. Do you even know what your kid wishes for? She doesn't want another doll or a stuffed elephant. She wants a day with her mom. This time it'll be different. Camille presses her lips together resentfully. I'll be there. There is no telling how long all this would have lasted had it not been for an accident that was to change Camille's life completely. Isabella was 6 years old that day. She woke up in the early hours of the morning. The girl, feeling a pleasant excitement and anticipating the holiday, jumped from the crib and hurried to the room of her grandmother. Grandmother for herself became the birthday girl. Wake up, wake up. Mommy's coming today. Today I'm 506. I'm already big. Will there be balloons? When Mom comes, she promised me a yellow cake. It'll have 2 stories like in the cartoon. Except Grandma Evelyn didn't react to her granddaughter's words or try to rouse her. Isabella didn't know that her grandmother had fallen asleep for good. During the night, Evelyn had a sudden cardiac arrest. What little Bella did not do. She cried, begged her grandmother to wake up, scolded her for making such a bad joke. But in vain. Hour after hour passed, but Grandma Evelyn did not get up. To Isabella, the time seemed like an eternity. She took the buttons and the phone from her grandmother, but it was disconnected. The girl tried the door but couldn't find the key. Isabella was completely confused. Her heart wheezing in her chest, she didn't realize the tragedy of the situation, but she understood that something had to be done. Mommy will be here soon, remembered the girl, and a little calmed down, even amused her. Mom will come and become a grandmother too. We just have to wait for Mommy. At the same time, Camille was many kilometers away from her hometown. The woman was in the dressing room, applause still ringing in her ears. After the performance that had just passed, she was playing her best favorite roles Roxanne in the play Cyrano de Bergerac. A blissful smile froze on her lips. Camille stared at her reflection in the mirror illuminated by light bulbs. There was a knock at the door. Come in. She threw in her notes. Arrogance and a sort of languid prima. Who's there? Camille, she heard a pleasant voice and behind her back. My name is Matisse Moreau. We are strangers, but I'd like to rectify that. I've seen you on stage. I'm ready to add my name to the ranks of your fans and your talent. And she turned over her shoulder and froze, not because the man was handsome or holding a luxurious bouquet of roses. No, it was just that she recognized him. The stranger who had been the only witness to her shame. The man from the yacht. From the look on the Frenchman's face, however, he didn't recognize her. Of course he did, for now she was no longer thin, but a well-feathered bird with shiny plumage. Camille, without wanting to, had been following the Frenchman's life. She knew he made wonderful movies. To appear in one meant a golden ticket to the world of show business and popularity. The man was known for the fact that the protagonists of his movies rarely went through standard. Ettinger, temperamental, eccentric director, himself found star talent for his movies. Here was one he had found. The woman, quickly remembering that she was an artist, pulled herself together. She squared her shoulders, smiled dazzlingly, and slightly lowered her eyelashes, as if ashamed of such praise. Oh, I know you. You're a filmmaker. I like your movies. She got up from her seat and gracefully approached the guest. I am honored to hear kind words from the maestro of the film world. She accepted the flowers and inhaled the fragrance of the buds. A blush appeared on her cheeks. Thank you. These are my favorite flowers. She lied. She looked at Matisse from under her eyelashes. I will not delay the purpose of my visit. I have a proposition for you, Camille. I think you'll like it, smiled the director. Are you sure? The artist smiled coquettishly. What kind of hand and heart can it be? Then I have to think for a couple of minutes. I'm a lady. The man laughed, appreciating both the flirtation and the joke. For now, I want you to trade the stage for a movie set. I think you deserve more than that. Camille, he said, would you like to discuss the details in private? If you're free, of course. Hogarth's breath caught. She'd planned to meet Michael after the play, but she realized that the theater director no longer interested her. She was out of it, all the juice out of him like a lemon. So she extended her hand to Matheson with great pleasure, checking Matisse's sluggish woman. Moreau offered her to go to Europe and star in his project. Camille's head was spinning at the prospects before her. She forgot about the fact that there was a child waiting for her somewhere far away. After 2 days that Camille spent in Matisse's room in his bed, the woman received a call from an unknown number. She frowned, looking at the unfamiliar digits. "Hello," she threw into the receiver. "Hogarth Camille?" asked the woman. "Who is this?" asked Camille, clutching the phone with her shoulder and grabbing her nude lipstick to touch up her lips. "Hurry up, you say? I'm busy." She was planning to have dinner with her new lover and future director. "You have a call from the regional hospital?" The stranger started. "It's about your mother and daughter. What's wrong with them? Is someone sick?" Without feeling anxious, Camille asked, talking lipstick. Last time, both daughter and mother had managed to catch chickenpox. Isabella had brought it in from daycare, and her mother, as it turned out, had never had it before and had no immunity. Camille then left her apartment for a month to stay with her lover because she couldn't afford to ruin her face with acne. "Online, please, if you have the opportunity," the woman asked. "Speak up." Camille on the other end of the phone could not take it anymore. Camille glanced at her watch, feeling impatient and annoyed. But the stranger finally answered. "Your mother died 2 days ago. A heart attack." "I'm sorry," she said. "Your daughter had been in the apartment with her grandmother the whole time. She couldn't get out. Eventually she couldn't bear it and wanted to call for someone through the window. There was an anti-missile net stretched across the window. The child stepped on it, the net snapped, and the girl went down." "What? What's wrong with her?" Camille sat down on the edge of the bed because her legs were shaking. The lipstick fell from her weak fingers, the glass hitting the white pile of the carpet, leaving a smear like a smear of blood. "She's alive. Her condition is already stable. It's actually quite a miracle. The child fell from the 3rd floor first onto a lilac bush, which slowed the fall. However, the girl has problems. You need to come, Camille," Matheson said, only about the fact that her mother was gone. To the man's offer to go with her to help her, she did not agree. The woman was hiding the child from her new beau. When Camille Hogarth returned to the city, the grim, gray, unsightly reality she had been running from for so long covered her head to toe like a dense woolen blanket made of a single moth. It prevented her from breathing, stuffed her lungs with dust. A mother's funeral depressing her daughter's condition. It knocked the ground out from under the feet of the artist, who only yesterday experienced a new crush, reveled in male attention and passion, dreamed of a trip to Europe. Camille arrived at the hospital only after dealing with her mother's funeral. She didn't want to see her daughter, as if she already knew what to do. The doctors told her that the girl had hit her spine. So much so that no one could give her a prognosis. Isabella's attending physician, taking Camille to an office, said honestly the odds were 50-50 for Isabella. She has a long, painstaking road ahead of her. Recovery will be difficult and painful. The baby is small. If she pulls through, she'll probably walk. Only a miracle can help you. The grueling work and the constant care of the child. To Camille, all those words sounded like a judgment. It became even worse for Hogarth when she, approaching her daughter's room, froze, not daring to enter and look into the child's face. The artist stood at the door, gathering her thoughts, trying to put a smile on her face and clutching the ridiculous giraffe toy she had bought her daughter. Then she heard voices. There were nurses in the room. "It's a shame about the girl. They say she went to ballet school," said the one whose voice sounded more mature to Camille. She's so pretty. What a pretty face, like a doll's. And now she'll be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She can't even go to the bathroom by herself, for God's sake. Change the receiver while she's asleep. Don't wake her up so quietly. She rarely sleeps, poor thing's waiting for her mother." Her younger colleague began to run errands. "Is it really that bad?" she asked with concern and sadness in her voice. "The doctors say that a miracle is possible. Have you seen many miracles yourself?" "No, I'll tell you this," I told her. "I've seen a lot of people with this kind of trauma in my lifetime. So God forbid she can hold a spoon on her own. And she's getting older." Disabled Camille turned pale and shook like a blade of grass in the wind. She vividly imagined her life next to her daughter. For now there was no one to leave her for. Here she was changing her beautiful suits and outfits for a home robe in flowers, as shabby as her mother's had been. After all, she'll have to cook and spoon-feed Bella, and she won't do it in dresses. She'll be dragging her daughter on a stroller, asking for help to get the stroller down. I mean, there wasn't even an elevator in the building. And then she would carry the child to the bathroom or change her diapers, even when she became an adult. What an abomination of nausea. Hogarth wanted to turn around and run away, but she didn't notice that the conversations had died down. The nurses had finished their business in her daughter's room. The door swung open, nearly hitting Camille in the face. "Ouch," gasped the young nurse, startled. Then her face brightened. "Hello. You must be Camille, Bella's mom. How we've been waiting for you. Bella will be so happy to see you when she wakes up." She barely opens her eyes. So she asks if Mommy SR came by, taking a closer look at the pale, visiting colleague. "Hush," he muttered, and she then turned to Camille. "Isabella is asleep. However, you may wait in the ward." Camille nodded confusedly. On heavy legs, as if filled with lead, she walked into the room. She froze, looking at her daughter. The pale girl was lying in bed. She seemed fine. Mom even thought it was all a mistake. A silly joke. Here she is, her daughter, lying there, sleeping and having good dreams. Now she's bored and runs up to her. She ran amusingly, tossing on her knees as if she were on springs. Only then did she begin to notice more and more details of the catheter. The stroller chair prepared for the future. The nasty bag under the bed. "What's in it for me?" Ahead the woman, finally realizing reality. She collapsed into the chair, dropping the giraffe to the floor. Camille covered her face with her hands. Swallowing back tears, Hogarth realized acutely that she felt no pity for her daughter. She only felt pity for herself and her future, which this girl seemed to want. The earliest days crept into her life unnoticed. She remembered Camille. Confused, tears, mascara all over her face. Camille dreamed of fame, wanted to be great. She was young and beautiful. And what would happen to her now? Bella appeared to her as a stone around her neck, a boulder. What was dragging her down? No, she couldn't afford that. "I'll give birth to a new child and forget about this defective one," Camille thought. "I'm sure I'll give birth to a healthy boy or girl by Matisse. And then have him in my arms forever." Suddenly, the silence of the hospital room was broken by the ringing of the phone. The sound of ringtones. The pop song was too loud, upbeat and inappropriate for a washing room missing medication. Camille reached into her bag. Here she threw a quick glance at Bella's face, afraid she would wake up. The little girl did indeed frown, her pale lips trembling. But the realm of Morpheus would not let the child go into the real world. "Yes, Mathis," the woman whispered, accepting the challenge. Hogarth stood up, stepped back to the window and stared out at the courtyard where the patients walked. "Camille, are you all right? When did you vacate the motel you parked in?" The man called Camille various names, cultivating French colloquialisms. "Amour, my love, we are Angel, we are Sherry, darling." And now she was also a star, his starlet, soon to light up in the sky. He believed it, believed in Camille. He whispered it to her, changing the silk sheets and catching her moans with his lips. From the nickname thrown around in the language of love, memories and nights in the Frenchman's arms. Camille's heart clenched sweetly. She covered her eyelids, letting these emotions flow through her. The woman realized that it was too early to talk about real feelings, but she had never felt such feelings with Michael or with anyone else. Matisse stirred her blood, made her heart beat furiously. She was falling in love with him. "Yeah, it's okay. I just still can't get over it. You know, it's a tragedy. I never had anyone but my mom, after all," mumbled Hogarth. "Camille, I understand, but you have to pull yourself together. Losing someone close to you is painful, but you can't get your mom back. The stage can't wait. You have to jump at the chance." Losing her tense brow, she shook her head. "I understand," but Camille cast a glance over her shoulder at her sleeping daughter. "None. But Camille, I called to say I'm leaving for France today. We're starting filming. Laetitia is waiting for you. She's waiting for you. She's waiting for her star," Matisse said, calling Paris in the old manner. That's what the Romans called this city. "It's up to you if you get on this train, but know that the next one may not be at the station. You're taking me to France." "Ah," the woman ahed upon hearing her lover's words. "It is I who am waiting for my leading actress," said the mayor. Hogarth froze in place. Camille had dreamed of being in the capital of France ever since that fateful night on the yacht. She had wanted to get to the city on the banks of the Seine. A city that was considered the Mecca of world fashion, the father of cinema, a place that once seen, one could safely pray on the other side of the world. "I'm coming," Camille exhaled. Then fervently whispered, "I beg you, give me a little more time to settle some formalities, and then I will come and belong only to you and the stage." The answer and the promise of the future actress satisfied the Frenchman. He was greedy for discoveries in the world of cinema, like a collector, searching, disappearing special rare pearls. Camille was he needed a week, no more. Threw Moreau and interrupted the call. Outside the window, she saw a woman pushing a baby stroller in front of her. She was dressed in old clothes of unreturned dark colors. Her face was pale, her look tired. Camille lifted her lips and turned away. She did not even see the woman stop at that moment. She walked over to her son, who was sitting in the stroller, and adjusted the blanket on his lap. As she kissed the child, her face transformed with a smile filled with love, to the brim. Hogarth, on the other hand, checked the time on her phone and walked over to the chair. "Mommy," came a chopping voice. Camille jerked. The phone almost fell out of her hands. Mom raised a frightened look at her daughter. There were tears in her bright green eyes, which were wide open. "Mommy, is it true you? Are you here?" The little girl cried. She looked at Camille and was afraid to blink. She was afraid to blink. And this is not reality or a continuation of the dream where she was next to her mother and grandmother and where her arms and legs were moving. Seeing her daughter's helplessness, Camille sensed a bad tone. She forced a smile out of herself. "Yes, honey, I'm here. How are you?" "I'm fine, Mommy," the girl replied quickly, looking at her mom in anticipation. She didn't understand why Mommy froze and looked so strange, why she didn't hug her. "Were you angry, Mommy?" Finally realized the little girl. "I won't do it again. I was really waiting for you on your birthday. I waited a long time, and Grandma wouldn't wake up. She didn't tell me to go to the window. I didn't obey, but I won't do it again. I'll be a good girl." Camille's throat constricted in discs, and she clamped her teeth together, afraid that a sob would come out of them. The woman didn't realize exactly what she was feeling at this second, looking into the little girl's face. So trusting. She turned 6 years old. I missed her birthday again. If only I had come then, Camille thought, but immediately pushed all thoughts away and came to life. No. The woman decided to herself, "I'll make a fresh start. She'll be better off without me too. I can't live with an invalid. I can be famous but not with a burden like Camille. An invalid child is a stigma, a disgrace. Mathis won't even ask me to act. He'd stop loving me if he knew about Isabella." Camille talked dryly to her daughter. The girl was staring at her face, unwavering. "Mommy, I love you so much," Isabella said suddenly. Camille looked into the child's eyes. "I loved you too," Camille said dryly. "You'll be fine for sure. Get some rest. I'll get the nurse. I need to talk to your doctor." She got up and hurried out of the room. An hour later, the whole hospital was abuzz. One of the staff had overheard Camille talking to the doctor about the fact that she wanted to give up the baby and leave it in the hospital under the care of the state. Camille was released not soon enough, took a long nursing and listened to questions with the doctor about what she should do next to transfer the child to a residential care facility for the disabled. When she stepped outside the window, she seemed to walk unnoticed toward her daughter's room, or what appeared to be her room. Camille changed her mind about going in. She decided to leave without saying goodbye. The woman walked down the hallway with a quick stride. Her heels clicked in time with her steps, reminiscent of bullet shots. Mom shouted from behind her, "Mom, you're leaving." Camille turned around sharply, looking at her daughter. She was sitting in a wheelchair. The same adult sad nurse was pushing the girl in front of her. On Bella's lap lay the very same giraffe. When Camille saw the hospital worker's face, she realized that she had done it on purpose. She took her daughter out to show her mother that you, sweetheart, forgot to say goodbye, she asked in an arrogant, even menacing tone. And then splashed out with her hands. "What are you doing, mother? A child is not a dress from the store. You cannot throw it away if the button came off. Do you know how she waited for you? How you've been killing yourself? She needs support now more than ever in her life." The words, which should have caused her mother anguish of conscience, had the opposite effect on Camille. She pressed on thickly, shaking with anger. None of your business. If you like cleaning up after sick ducks and wiping drool, that's your choice. This is not the life I chose, she shouted with a ringing voice. So what's the voice? Down the corridor, a nurse staggered from the cuckoo mother. Tears flowed down Isabella's cheeks again. Mommy, why are you leaving? Are you really leaving forever? She whispered, looking into Camille's face. Hogarth turned away. Again, she did it so reluctantly, so weakly, that the affirmative nod was hard to see. But Bella saw it. There was a tiny heart beating in a child's chest, but there was more love in it than there was water in the ocean and stars in the night sky. And now, in that second, Bella realized that her feeling was not mutual. She'd guessed it before, but she hadn't allowed herself to believe it. Her mom didn't love her. The truth, it turned out, was oglingly painful. It made her dizzy, made her chest ache, and made her very reluctant to cry. Bella was more painful than when she fell from the apartment window. She hadn't had time to be frightened then. The lilac branches had caught her first, and then she had lost consciousness. Now she was falling and falling and falling, but no one would catch her at the bottom. This is all happening because I've been a bad girl, thought the little girl, frightened. Mommy, I'm sorry, screamed the little girl tearfully. Mommy, please, Mommy, don't go away. I'll be good. Just forgive me. Camille's lips trembled. She gripped the handle of her bag tighter, noticed with her head, and took a step back. No, Mother. The little girl shrieked bird-like, then jerked forward after Mommy. Only her legs wouldn't obey her. The little girl, whom the nurse had not sworn into the stroller in her haste, fell out. She hit her face on the floor, but did not even pay attention to it. The little girl was resuscitated to her last strength. Choking back tears, tried again to get back up, at least with her torso, at least as a worm. But she wanted to crawl to Mommy. Mom, not leaving me, wheezed the child, already lying on the floor. Holy Mother of God, my darling, my good one. How so? Wailed the nurse, jumping up to the girl, lifting her up on her cheeks, a woman who could not be surprised by much. The tears were flowing. She was horrified at the picture that unfolded. She took a step back, then another and another. Then she turned and ran away from the pounding in her heels. Not just the sound of gunshots, but machine gun fire. Mommy, Mommy, she screamed. I'm cured. I'll be healthier, I promise, Mommy. Just don't leave me again, Mommy. Mommy. That scream would haunt Camille Hogarth for a long time. She would wake up in the best hotels, on luxurious sheets, and in ordinary acting trailers, and in the arms of her beloved Matisse, but always in a cold sweat. Shivering, with tears on her cheeks, she will hear her daughter begging not to leave, lying on the hospital floor. And she would also be afraid that someday her secret would be revealed to the world. And then everything she has achieved will turn to ashes, and those around her will turn their backs on Camille, the sweet, naive woman everyone loved. Many years would pass, but Camille's biggest nightmare would come true. Fate is a cunning bitch, and she was ready to present the woman with a large bill. After all, there's a price to pay for everything. Emily Ellington walked down the hospital corridor, feeling strange. On her feet were soft ballet flats, something reminiscent of the usual point shoes, only without the hard toe box. She tried to walk as quietly as possible, not wanting to draw attention to herself in a place like this. Emily did not like hospitals. She remembered her mom, who was a role model, a sharply captured and statuesque lady. Important, proud, she had become a dry branch very quickly. Emily had to spend a lot of time in her hospital bed. Proud Adriana was not willing to meet her end at home in a cozy bed. She didn't want to burden those close to her and show them her weakness by demanding care. However, Emily still shuttled from the hospital to the dance studio until the very last day. That was probably why now, when she returned to the hospital, there was a feeling of anxiety, sadness, and a kind of hopelessness on her soul. Much worse was the fact that she had come to visit not some old woman, but a little girl, her glorious student. She was only 6 years old. However, Bella seemed older than her years. The girl was attentive, focused, and determined. Emily remembered how she begged her grandmother to wait for her a little longer, trying to bring simple movements to perfection. At her sharpness, the pilots performed underneath. and there were even wrinkles of strain appearing on the child's logic. Emily thought that Bella's mother was nothing like her. Yes, Ellington remembered Camille. Even though many years had passed, it was hard to forget a person who had ruined your life because of his own anger. At first, Emily didn't even want to take Isabella to her school, thinking that personal animosity would prevent her from teaching the girl well. Except that Bella won her over. The little girl with dark-like hair, pale skin and eyes, Emerald snuck into the heart of the teacher. The thing is that Emily was increasingly attended by the children of rich parents. They didn't care about their daughter's talent or success. They just wanted to photograph their little girls in beautiful costumes, their swans during the report concert, to show off to friends. But Bella was unique. The girl seemed to immediately understand the whole essence of ballet dance. After all, it was not only technique. The best parts were performed with the soul. At Bella, she was beautiful. When Emily found out what happened to her, she was in such shock that she could not teach classes. Her hands were numb and all she could think about was the baby. That day she waited for a student to come to class. Bella was never late. Emily even began to worry. As it turned out, not for nothing. She even called Evelyn, however no one picked up the phone. The news reached her a week later. A week, and it was deafening. Emily couldn't even hold back the tears. She imagined how hard it was for the girl to be left alone in the apartment. And then now the teacher, pulling herself together, came to visit Bella at the hospital. She hoped to cheer her up. In her hands were flowers and a bag with a gift. She had bought her best student new ballet outfits and point shoes made of pink satin. Emily realized that she could not give them to a girl who was put in a wheelchair. But for some reason she took the gift with her anyway. As she approached the room, a young nurse came out. "Oh, are you here to see Bella?" she asked. "You know, I have to warn you." She stopped talking after the accident. The teacher said sadly. No, she was a real piece of work. Was a carcass, dejected, shook her head at the girl. She had stopped answering questions. After her mother's antics, Emily frowned. She had not seen Camille a single time. The girl was only taken care of by her grandmother, claiming that her daughter was earning money and building a career. Except that no matter how much money Camille earned, Emily couldn't help but notice that she certainly didn't give her money for such shopping. What's wrong? She asked with unexpected anger even for herself, as if she was already anticipating the answer. The nurse furtively looked around, afraid that they were being overheard. The girl, however, was not averse to gossip, so she pitched forward. She refused to give up the baby, said she didn't want an invalid and wanted nothing to do with her, told her to give it to an orphanage, didn't even want to know where exactly her daughter would be sent. The color rushed from Emily Ellington's face as well. For a moment she was out of breath, as if she had done an unfortunate pirouette, tripped and fell. The nurse was still talking, but Emily was no longer listening. "I'll go to Bella." She interrupted her warmly. "Did you bring the baby flowers?" The young nurse was surprised to see a luxurious bouquet. "She's not just a child. Bella is my student. It is customary to give flowers to ballet dancers," Emily retorted. "I'm afraid the road to the stage is closed to her." The girl shook her head and stood aside, letting the teacher pass. The room was very quiet. However, Bella was awake. She was lying on the bed, turning her head to the window. Her gaze was devoid of emotion. A plush giraffe was lying next to her. "Hello, my pearl," Emily smiled softly. The girl stirred, turned to her. Her face twitched as if she wanted to answer, but changed her mind. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come." The studio only now went on vacation. She took the bouquet and put it in a vase. "Do you like flowers? I chose all the yellow ones they had at the flower shop." "That's your favorite color, isn't it? I think it turned out beautifully." Bella looked at the flowers in silence, a bright spot of sunshine in her dreary room. She had once told her teacher in confidence that she dreamed of receiving a bouquet after a performance. Emily looked at the child, feeling her heart break all over again. It was as if all the strength and emotion had been sucked out of Bella. She sat down next to her and began to talk. Ellington talked at length, telling funny incidents from school and ballet life. Imagine, she recently said that she would never dance in the Nutcracker because there is a mouse king. She's afraid of mice. Say, "You're not afraid of mice, are you?" And so Bella's lips even began to droop. When Emily tried to joke again, Soon the child gave the teacher a smile, which made Ellington relax a little. She touched the girl's dark hair. "There you are smiling. You are so beautiful in these moments," she said, gently stroked the child's head, and then asked, "Do you know why I called you Pearl?" The girl shook her head and looked at the teacher curiously. "You know there are countable steps in ballet. Picks. My mom used to call them pearls of truths. She used to say that real ballerinas do this movement as if it came to life. Pearls on a thread. The first time you did them, you came out incredibly well, like you'd always walked like that. I was delighted and involuntarily thought you were a pearl." The teacher shared her innermost thoughts. Isabella listened to her with her mouth ajar. Fascinated by such high praise, Emily leaned closer to the girl, looking into her eyes. "Now I am sure I was not mistaken. Do you know that pearls are the queen of all gems? The chance to find pearls in the sea is great luck. I think you're a real pearl. You have talent, sweetheart. So no matter what happens, you mustn't give up. Understand me?" The girl nodded, but then snickered. Her lips trembled. Then she quietly said, "I can't dance anymore." Emily never made promises whose fulfillment she was not sure of, but now it came off her lips before she had time to consider the words, "Can you?" It's all about believing. "I will stay with you, Pearl. I will help you." Emily then took out a box of birthday presents from a bag and showed the contents to her patient. "Will you wear these point shoes? My girl, I swear to her, I will do everything I can for it." Isabella's eyes, which today were as dark as forest moss. Tears appeared. Emily hugged her tightly around the shoulders so that the girl would not see that she herself was crying. The sight from Ren, the young ballerina who was bound to shine on stage, frightened her even at this second. Wished she could hug her teacher. In response, she covered her eyes and touched her face into Lady Emily's neck. Her salty tears flooded the silk handkerchief. One of those that the teacher always wore around her neck. The little girl was afraid to trust an adult again and get burned, for she was in so much pain. However, she wanted too much to be loved by anyone at this moment. As Emily held Bella in her arms, their new life began. Ellington Emily never had a personal life. So only light flings with fans who admired her beauty and grace, but could not conquer the heart of the ballerina and stay close for a long time. First Emily had studies, then her mother fell ill, and then left her daughter. Their family business, ballet school, fell on the fragile shoulders of Ellington. The girl had to prove to her students and parents that she was no worse than a mother, so she rarely thought about a family and a child. Yes, sometimes she really wanted to give up everything and become a mom, especially when she saw happy women, sometimes even pregnant, who brought their babies to her studio and kissed goodbye. However, Emily's mind was firmly set on the idea that a career and children were incompatible. She remembered her mom saying in all seriousness when letting her go to school dances, "No boys, Emily, they have one thing on their mind. Need to get under your skirt for a future ballerina is unacceptable." And she admonished her daughter, "Remember, either you're a prima or you're a mom. You choose whether you want to devote your life to dancing or your family. But you have me." The girl was indignant at the time. "But you're a ballerina." Mom then grinned, "That's why I don't dance on stage, but teach others, because I have you." Of course, later they realized that the main roles Emily will not see. The right leg, which as a child taught Camille, often reminded of itself. And now, after a long time, Emily has a daughter, already an adult, and even in a wheelchair. Yes, Emily adopted Isabella, afraid to even imagine that the child will end up in an orphanage. So she spent a long time collecting documents and talking to lawyers. When Bella was discharged from the hospital, she went to Emily's home, not to the orphanage. Ellington's life became considerably more difficult. She hired a caregiver for Bella, drove her herself to rehab classes with a psychologist, often took her to school. In general, at the end of the day, she was exhausted. However, Emily believed that seeing her little girl try was worth all the sleepless nights. The doctors praised her and were even genuinely surprised, considering the child's success a real miracle. Ellington was silent, but realized that there was no miracle here, only the child's willpower, character, and core in Isabella was more than adult humans. In the summer, the girl went to an active rehabilitation camp. She returned from there encouraged, having socialized with other children with similar problems. It seemed that life began to get better. In spite of this, Her friends twirled their fingers at her head. Are you crazy? Zenka, long will you play the role of Mother Teresa? Give the child to a boarding school. She was already indignant, came to visit after a few months for a cup of tea. What do you mean, give it up? According to you, it works the same way as in the store. You can return the child as a pack of expired milk. Unable to stand her, began Emily. Svetlana rolled her eyes toward the ceiling and took a sip of green tea. Do you understand me? You all did not want to start a normal family. And now what? An invalid? That's a lifelong responsibility. The doctor said her injury is treatable, and she's making progress. I was told she couldn't hold a spoon. And now Bella climbs up on the stroller by herself, takes care of herself. She also pushes her ballerina lips up by herself. Bella is a very strong girl. She's strong, a real fighter. She'll manage, and I'll help her. You'll see, we'll invite you to the performance. But I still think what you did was stupid and impulsive. Yes, I feel sorry for her too, but I feel sorry for stray dogs. I feel sorry for the homeless sometimes too. What are we going to do? Take them all home? It's a burden. Emily, you need to build a personal life, not ruin it. Such a crude comparison was not to the liking of the intelligent teacher, but she didn't have time to answer. The women who were sitting in the kitchen did not notice how a wheelchair appeared in the doorway. By now, Bella had learned to use it and could move around the spacious apartment on her own if Emily kept the doors open. You know, I can do a lot of things. The doctor praises me, the little girl said, looking into the face of her adult guest with a not childish look. Svetlana blushed with shame and could not find an answer. She quickly said goodbye to her friend and her foster daughter and flew out the door. After seeing her off, Bella looked at her foster mom, whom she still called Lady Emily. Am I a burden? She asked bluntly. That's what my mom called me. She also told my grandmother that I was a burden. Emily crouched down in front of the girl, taking her hands in her own, not listening to the others. Pearl, she looked fondly into the child's eyes. You know, there will always be evil people around you. It doesn't matter what you are. If you can't walk, they'll act like Sveta, calling you a burden. If you're the best, they'll make up gossip to smear you out of envy. The one behind you is always trying to push you in the back and make you fall. The important thing is not to be like those people and keep moving forward. I see. The girl glossed her lips and looked at Emily with excitement. Then she removed the plaid from her legs that concealed her injury. I want to show you something, she whispered. Emily noticed that the girl's eyes glistened and her forehead protruded. So she was worried about the white man and snapped. A convulsive exhalation. Then she strained out of her strength. Oh my God, gasped Ellington. Emily thought at first that she had imagined it. But no, her young pupil's foot moved and extended all the way up her toes, as if the girl were about to perform a choreographed movement. But man. Isabella glowed a little on her temples with droplets of sweat. She threw her head back, looking at the teacher. Did you see that? Did you see that? Emily nodded, pressing her palm to her lips. Then she hugged the girl tightly. You're a big, smart girl. It hasn't been long at all, but you've made such progress. I'm proud of you, my pearl. Of course, they did not plan to stop at what they had achieved. However, not everything was going smoothly. It was difficult for Isabella, especially when she sat in class and watched the dancers. One night, when Emily left her room to get a drink of water, she heard the soft music that was playing in her foster daughter Violin's room. She recognized the part at once. Dressed from Swan Lake, the woman tiptoed toward Isabella's room. Only to collapse to the floor as she tried to get into the right pose. Ellington wanted to run up to her, to hug and comfort her, but did not dare to give herself away. It was not for nothing that the little girl was secretly trying to practice. Then Ellington saw Isabella slam her fist on the floor in frustration. She clenched her teeth without crying. The tears glistened off her cheeks and crashed to the floor. And then the girl tried to stand up again, just to stand in her usual classical ballet pose, not even to perform a step or a jump. Emily's heart clenched tighter and tighter. The woman was constantly looking for ways to help her daughter. That's how she found out about a great physical rehabilitation instructor, massage therapist Ethan. The man, if rumors were to be believed, was almost a magician who helped people walk again without much hope of his help. Emily wrote a letter. She told him about Bella's plight and the girl's hopes of not just walking, but making the leap she dreamed of. Bella. During this jump, the ballerina seems to freeze in midair, and Isabella had once dreamed of doing it again. Someday, Emily wrote at the end of Isabella's letter, she would surely become a dressed Giselle or perform the entrance in Don Quixote. But she needs help. From the moment Emily dropped the letter in the mailbox, a week passed, then a second, past a third. But Ethan has not responded. The woman had already given up hope. When a guest arrived at her studio, she didn't recognize him right away. For some reason, Ellington had imagined Ethan to be a grown-up old man, like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, the movie she and Bella had seen not so long ago. Except Ethan turned out to be a young blonde man with a sly squint of his eyes and a defined lip line. His skin careened from a tan. "I've been abroad, and now I've come to see." Spoiling, he declared from the threshold. As if he had no doubt of the successful outcome of his work. "Where is the future prima ballerina? Excuse me, but you are not too young." Emily hesitated, not going to trust her daughter's health to a man who looked more like an Armani underwear model than a doctor. She thought she'd fallen for some kind of PR stunt, like a fool. Ethan grinned, though. "No offense taken, I'm sure, Emily. You've been told the same thing, haven't you? That's not how I pictured a ballet teacher, either." He looked at the brunette with curiosity and interest in his eyes. Ethan's remark hit him in the eye, not the eyebrow. Ellington had nothing to complain about. She had to persistently prove to people that age and a young face were not an indicator of experience and knowledge. In the end, she trusted the man. After a long conversation, Emily agreed to the classes, but began to attend them herself. She and Ethan developed a whole system to get the child back on her feet. Ethan's fame proved justified. He found an approach to the child's heart, invariably calling her Squirrel. He could make her laugh, but he never let her down. They worked night and day, and then the happy day came. Isabella Hogarth took her first steps. They were devoid of the inherent grace of a ballerina, but Emily suddenly seemed the most beautiful, touching important strings of her soul. She stretched out her arms, taking Bella into her embrace. The girl hugged Ellington tightly and murmured, unable to cope with her emotions. "Thank you, Mom." Emily froze for a moment. "I don't believe my ears." She raised an amazed look to Ethan, who had frozen beside her. He nodded, saying, "Yes, I heard it too." Ellington hugged the child tighter, kissing the top of her head. In that second, she believed again that she had made the right choice. Bella is her daughter. She would never let her go. Camille Hogarth was known in Europe as a poet. It was a pseudonym she thought would sound better, and she'd changed her name as soon as she'd cut ties with her past life. She was sure that now, after meeting Matheson, in their fate will come a white streak. At first it was. The woman got the role, but here is the success it did not bring her. Critics did not like the game Camille. They called it empty and cardboard. They claimed that Anne spoiled a great movie. Matisse reassured his mistress Honey. Black Puerto Rico is also PR, he argued, taking the newspaper from her with another scathing article. It was your debut. Theater is very different from the film industry, although many people don't think so. You have to take the criticism and get better. Except Camille never learned to listen to advice. She became very angry. She had no intention of giving up. Especially with Michael, she broke off the relationship through a loud scandal. The way to Russia and the theater was closed for her. Yes, there were other directors, but it was too all tied up. The woman began to make her way in the world of cinema. Matisse did not know that his beautiful and outwardly not vicious Camille was that still a volcano in sheep's clothing. Hogarth framed other actors to get a role or just to punish them for malicious gossip. In doing so, Camille acted subtly, rarely shouting her own hands. However, people began to notice something amiss. Once, when Camille came to a casting call for a melodrama, one of the applicants for the lead role poisoned. The other girls pointed fingers at the Russian schemer, saying that she kindly brought the victim a cup of coffee. Of course, they couldn't prove anything, but a bad reputation had developed around Hogarth that no oxygen could cleanse. Beaten back to the hotel, nor Mathis. For the role of Camille's career, which never blossomed into the full bloom of the beginning. That's when the woman decided to take a run at Matisse. She introduced him exactly snake-sucking strength, money, and connections. The Frenchman succumbed to the beauty's charms. He was dazzled by her. Camille realized that the main role in her life is to play the best version of herself. As a result, she became the glamorous beauty from the magazines. However, she soon had to forget. She simply bathed in luxury. Sometimes she was invited to shoot as a model. Sometimes Matisse, giving in to her pleas, gave her a role in the movie. He also arranged his woman in a TV show as a presenter, using acquaintances. The woman started doing charity work to clear her reputation. All in all, Camille was able to establish herself in this world, although she realized that without the sea she was nothing. Soon the French director announced the engagement. Articles about their affair and future wedding appeared in many glossy magazines, just as Camille had once dreamed. On the picture she was dazzling, in an indigo dress, with dark hair, arranged in a high hairstyle. The woman could not admire herself. Matisse and Camille married 5 years after they met. Another 2 years later, Matisse, embracing his wife in the marital bed, asked the cherished question, "You do not want a child, Mona?" Breath was not intercepted. She looked away, as if embarrassed, although she was simply hiding her eyes from her spouse. "I don't know. I can't imagine being a mother," she muttered. The man touched her chin with his fingers, looked lovingly into her eyes. "I'm sure you'll make a lovely, loving mother. You are made for love." Camille, to not respond to her husband's words. Camille drew the Frenchman to her lips with a passionate kiss. "I don't know if I want a child, but it's always nice to try." Straight to Matisse's ear, inviting lobe. 2 years have passed since that night. 2 whole years that were filled with trying to conceive. But Camille was never able to get pregnant. Every month, when she saw the blood, she would get angry and think, "How could I? Once I lost my virginity to some asshole and I immediately protected the baby. Now I can't, no matter how hard I try." Of course, Frost thought about the reasons. So he decided to go with Camille to the doctor. Except that the woman suddenly became hysterical. "I don't want to," she shrieked, blushing thickly. "No, I hate doctors. Can I go later?" Matisse himself such a violent reaction surprised, but then he reasoned that the topic of infertility is very sensitive. He trusted his wife in everything, so he did not argue now. The man did not suspect how Camille was afraid that the truth will come out. It turned out that Matisse very much values family relationships. What would he say if he found out she'd already given birth? That she abandoned a crippled child. He called her an angel, a heavenly creature, pure and kind. Perhaps this is all a punishment for my sins, payback, Camille thought, sometimes looking in the mirror at her beautiful reflection. However, payback came later. Another 3 years passed. The subject of children became taboo in the family of the director and the failed actress. If Matisse talked about children, even his nephews, she could get hot and something to break. Relations between them sometimes dragged on and cracked at the seams. However, the woman quickly came to her senses and again accused the neck of the director. Thin hands kissed, fervently whispered passionate words of love in his ear, begging to forgive her. Matisse was giving up. One day the man returned to their luxurious mansion in a wonderful mood. He handed his wife an envelope in which she found tickets to the theater. "What are these?" "Swan Lake." She was surprised. "Yes, the Russian ballet is coming to us. They say it's the most beautiful in the world." "I thought you'd like it," said the mayor, hugging his wife. "You said you took ballet as a child." Did I? The woman hid her nose. "I don't have fond memories of it. If you don't want to go, we don't have to go." The directors got a little upset, walked over to the home bar and poured himself a whiskey. Really, this is a unique premiere. All the cream of society and journalists will be there. There's a young prima who's been invited to join the Royal Ballet in London. They say she's so talented that when she appears on stage, the whole audience weeps. Yes, Camille, having heard that there will be local bombard at the performance, no longer listened about the ballerina. Let's go far away. I need a new dress and shoes. And a manteau. I want to shine on opening night. Camille was sitting in one of the best seats. She was very unhappy and proud of that fact. And before the ballet began, she whispered to her husband, "How did you manage to get tickets like that?" Even that upstart from Kristen's news program is sitting in the back. The man smiled broadly. "I didn't tell you. They were given to me. They sent me a note saying they were grateful for my writing, especially the movie, starring you. It said the movie helped me find my way in life. But the letter wasn't signed. Camille was surprised, but she didn't have time to answer. The hall had fallen into darkness. The sounds died down. And then the performance began. The audience could not take away mesmerized looks from the prima that performed at once two roles dressed and dressed. The performer was able to convey the emotions and feelings of the heroines that were so opposite to each other. She was delightful. At the end, many cried. Just as Marlowe said, tears flowed down Camille's cheeks. Either there is no production or there is no production. She realized why she was sitting in such a good seat. She saw her face, even though it had makeup on it. Even though many long years had passed, the mother recognized the abandoned daughter that looked like her when she was young. Like a twin she recognized, but she couldn't believe her eyes. No, it can't be. I'm imagining things. Camille thought as the performance ended. The hall erupted in applause. They applauded so furiously that Camille felt a knot inside. She'd never been clapped like that before. What she had thought was a flurry of applause in the past turned out to be only a light one. A puff of wind compared to the storm rising in the hall. The people stood up and headed towards the stage. Camille clutched at his elbow, startled. "Where are you going?" "I want to give her flowers," the man said. "She's beautiful." Camille saw her husband sneak onto the stage and hold out a bouquet of snow-white roses. She smiled at him and then looked up and looked into the audience. Camille felt as if she had been electrocuted. The last doubts evaporated. The girl was looking straight into her eyes. Camille Hogarth felt sick and stuffy. The luxurious manteau was choking her. The string of pearls around her neck was a stranglehold. She sprinted away from the hall, then into the air. She gulped it greedily, trying to come to her senses. That's where Matisse found her. He had a smile on his face, his eyes shining. He hadn't even noticed his wife's pallor. "You won't believe it. Prima Isabella invited us to dinner. She's the one who sent me the tickets. She's marvelous. Perhaps I can invite her to the movie." Camille listened to the words of the sea and inner vision. She got really scared. What is she up to? Mentally aghast, the former actress. And also us, the ballerina woman, could not refuse. More precisely, she was afraid to let the man go alone even more than to meet her daughter. They met at a restaurant. Isabella was running late. Omaru was agitated. His condition infuriated the woman. She was jealous. And when Bella appeared in the hall, Camille was completely taken aback. The girl was walking towards them in an indigo-colored dress. Her dark, thick hair was tucked up, revealing a young, pure face. Camille realized that her daughter had dressed the same way she had on the day of her engagement to her husband. The difference was that Isabella was incredibly beautiful and young. Camille clenched her napkin, clenching her teeth as she looked at her daughter. All evening she had sat there, afraid to say a word. She waited for Bella to stab her in the back, to pull her mask off in front of her husband. But it did not happen. Mary did not notice her wife's condition. Camille, raising her gaze to it, inwardly shuddered. She saw the face of Matisse, who looked only at Isabella, the same admiring gaze full of adoration. He had looked at her only a long time ago. And when Matisse laughed at another of Bella's jokes, his lips snapped. Q. Just a miracle of Monomac. Camille froze. She was shocked. She looked at her husband. He only called her that. He seemed to realize it himself, because he was embarrassed. God, forgive me for my frivolous behavior. The director was bewildered. To be honest, you look insanely like my spouse. Don't you think? Camille Hogarth reluctantly looked into her daughter's face. The one waiting stared at her mother, flirting with her water glass as if you were mother and daughter. Suddenly Mathis made another statement. Camille trembled as if she had received a slap in the face. Bella, on the other hand, smiled. My own mother. The girl shook her head. Alas, Mathis, I don't have her. Or rather, of course she exists. It's just not enough to give birth to a child to become a mom. Really? Marouas wondered. I heard some rumors about you, but I could not even assume that they have a grain of truth. Bella sighed sorrowfully and put her glass down on the table with a graceful movement. Alas, sometimes life does pirouettes that you wouldn't see in a movie. Rumors don't lie. My mother, my own mother, abandoned me in the hospital when she found out I was disabled. Maybe she had her reasons? Moreau asked. There are all kinds of situations. There is no such thing as a decent reason to abandon a child. It seemed to me that Mom always loved children, you know? Especially moms, Bella said fervently, and then took a breath and added more calmly. You know, I was lucky I met good people. My teacher became a real mom to me. She showed me what a mother's love is, love and in spite of any difficulties. Later, I had a father. My instructor Bella smiled broadly. The story came out funny. They fought for a long time, constantly arguing about me. They secretly liked each other, though. When I made my first decent ballet movement, they hugged for joy, and my father kissed my mother. I then fell over again in amazement. They were liquidly embarrassed, but even more frightened, ran up to me, but I began to laugh until tears. After that incident, they didn't put up with their feelings. A year later, we got married. So Ethan became a father to me. Wonderful people. The director said thoughtfully, but you are even more wonderful. Bella, to go through such hardships without a mother, without the ability to walk, not everyone is given. I had good examples in front of me, Isabella decided to joke. Like Batman, Harry Potter, Spider-Man. They lost their parents too, but they became superheroes. I decided not to save the world, but I did wear tight tights. Frosty. The bride laughed, not the least bit embarrassed by the elite restaurant crowd. The Frenchman's eyes were burning. He was enraptured by the young and strong ballerina. You know, Matisse, maybe one day you want to make a movie about my life? I'd love to play the lead, Bella suddenly suggested. Then she smiled slyly and looked at Hogarth. My mother could have been played by Camille's own mother. Of course, the fact that she left me, and how would the movie have ended? Hogarth asked suddenly, in a stressed voice. Monsieur, maybe? Bella shrugged her shoulders. The important thing is that the offender knows what he's being punished for. I think revenge can be sweet only when I look into the face of the one who wronged me. There was silence at the table. Then Bella got up from her seat. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. Without saying another word, Camille ran after her. Bursting into the ladies' room, she clutched at her daughter's arm with such force that the ballerina could barely keep from screaming in pain. What do you want? Camille exclaimed. Her whole body shook. Tell me, what do you want from me? Bella resigned herself to her scornful look. Do you think I want anything from you? A mother's love and care, maybe? Funny, she snorted. Unless Matisse is a beautiful man, right? Do you think you and I have the same taste? Camille staggered, seeing how her daughter had changed. Now she was no longer the naive beauty you, but a black swan. Dressed her up, she was intimidating. Bella grinned. Camille, did you watch the performance carefully? Did you see how dressed as a black swan generalizes the prince, pretending to be his lover? You saw him confess his love to another. It hurts, really, when you're alone. I know it does. Camille's neck glistened, her lips. Her gaze was full of fear and madness.
I beg you, leave him to me. Please, I'll do anything you ask. Just don't tell him anything. And don't let him take my everything. The woman who had always aspired to glamour and luxury fell to her knees in the restroom. She grasped the blue hem of her daughter's dress, the latter looking down at her.
Bella's face expressed no emotion. You gave up so quickly, she said dejectedly. It even hurts for me you never fought like that. Then Bella tugged the fabric of the dress. Camille fell to the floor, sobbing. The ballerina walked over to the mirror, fixing her makeup. You didn't even say I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Immediately, Camille cried out. Please, I'm sorry. The daughter sighed. Calm down, I don't need him. I don't need you either. I just want you to live and remember that you are happy only by my grace, because I have become better than you in everything.
Camille, even as a person. Really, you don't deserve any credit for that. Only my grandmother and my real parents helped me to become kinder than I would have liked, than you deserve, Bella retorted and walked away. Camille remained on the cold floor, shaking. She realized that her daughter had told the truth, and now she would live her life constantly looking back, as if she were in the water. After all, the anticipation of a blow is worse than the blow itself. Isabella left the restaurant without saying goodbye. She breathed in the night air, feeling relieved. Yes, sometimes she thought of revenge, of seeing her mother. But when she saw her on her knees, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt nothing, except a prick of disappointment. The mom that had seemed perfect to her as a child now evoked only pity. When the reptiles in front of her on the bathroom floor, Bella looked up into the dark sky and thought that she wanted to see her mom and dad and her little brother Matvey sooner. She missed her real family. Time to go home.
The ballerina smiled and walked away.
Finally leaving her past behind her.